The South African government wants to completely control religion in this country. Specifically, it wants to make sure that Christians in this country never end up becoming a threat to their agenda. A process by the government's Cultural, Religious and Language Rights Commission, which we have discussed many times on this channel before, while clothed in a language of rights and equality and protection, is now increasingly becoming a tool to justify complete state control over a religious sphere that had historically enjoyed liberty beyond government interference. You see, South Africa truly used to be a beacon of Christianity. The founders of the Cape of Good Hope colony established a distinctly Protestant and Calvinist colony with a vow to God to spread the Christian faith on the African continent. When the Dutch pioneers of the 19th century moved inland, they once again vowed the same to God to establish free Christian republics. And when South Africa exited the British Commonwealth in 1961, it did so as a distinctly constitutionally recognized Christian republic. Our ancestors were inspired by their Calvinist confessional commitment to advance the Christian faith in the public domain and in every sphere of society. Now, fast forward about 60 years to 2026, and everything has changed. Now the government of the day seems hell-bent on eroding this hard-fought religious freedom of South Africa's Christians. And sadly, it does so in the name of justice. But the process hasn't been smooth by any means, because what was introduced as this so-called project of self-regulation has steadily revealed itself as something far more intrusive by the government. Between the leaked policy frameworks and the mounting legal challenges from Christian groups all over the country, the mass protests that had been held against this already, and even the public resignation of the Commission's own chairperson less than a month ago, citing dysfunction and loss of control of this committee, and a deepening confrontation between state authority and the religious freedom, which is emerging all the while the freedoms believers have long enjoyed in this part of the world are systematically dismantled. You see, what is unfolding around South Africa's Culture, Religion and Language Rights Commission is a revealing moment in the long-running tension between constitutional freedom of religion and bureaucratic authority. On paper, the Commission's mandate appears benign: promote respect and foster tolerance and protect community rights. Few would object to such language. But, as is so often the case in modern governance, the real story lies not in the declared principles, but in what the institution is actually doing. The 2017 Commercialization of Religion report, which is central to the ongoing debate, does highlight genuine concerns about governance failures to protect the public from exploitative practices in some religious institutions. Yet, it also embeds a far more consequential policy logic, that problematic religious conduct justified expanded regulatory structures of state power over the practice of religion itself. The implication is, of course, that churches are increasingly framed not primarily as rights-bearing entities, but as risk environments required monitoring from the state. But of course, modern regulatory expansion rarely announces itself as control. It advances through the rhetoric of coordination and protection and standardization. Formally, voluntarily, practically coercive. The semantics soften while the authority expands. Legal challenges from both Christian and Muslim organizations reflect the fact that this dispute is not simply about administrative procedures. It concerns a foundational constitutional question. Can an institution, the government, which had been created for the purpose of safeguarding freedoms, gradually assumed a supervisory authority over the exercise of the very freedoms that they are supposed to protect? And what would be the implications of such a shift? As a chairperson of the CRL Rights Commission, Toku Mkwanazi Zaluva recently explained, take a look at this.
No religious leader will be allowed to operate without the registration.
On 15 January 2026, Professor Musa Zulu, the chairperson appointed to lead this Article 22 Commission, the very commission tasked to develop this proposed framework of so-called self-regulation of religious authorities, publicly resigned. His departure was an extraordinary indictment of the Commission's internal functioning. According to Zulu, he was never able to operate as chair in any meaningful sense. Members were allegedly added to the committee without him even knowing about it, agendas could not be set, meetings could not be structured. The Commission's objectives shifted constantly. He described the nature of the discussions as toxic. Authority in practice now rested with a small inner circle directing proceedings behind the scenes. But in an extraordinary turn of events, Zulu even openly distanced himself from the very framework of the Commission itself. He now openly described the Commission as a front to disguise a predetermined agenda of state control over religion driven by personal hostility towards particularly Christian faith and traditions. In this earth-shattering media appearance, the institutional facade of orderly reform gave way to these allegations of dysfunction and contested control at the heart of the body tasked with reshaping the relationship between state and religion. The fallout, of course, was immediate. Religious leaders present at the briefing called for the Article 22 Commission itself to be disbanded, a reflection of how the mistrust now surrounding the process has taken over. But of course, the official response did little to restore confidence of religious leaders. At the subsequent media briefing on 21 January, the Commission opted for counter-allegations rather than any rebuttal, with the chairperson's defense of criminal complaints launched against Freedom of Religion SA spokesperson was widely interpreted as a troubling signal, suggesting how dissenting religious voices or religious organizations might be treated under this expanded regulation regime. The recent mid-February parliamentary hearings further amplified the unease. Religious leaders from across the spectrum voiced objections to state involvement in their ecclesiastical affairs, while members of parliament echoed concerns regarding both regulatory overreach and the inflammatory public statements attributed to the Commission's leadership. And so, this state initiative to control religion in practice is now beset by internal resignations, contested authority, legal challenges, and widening political alienation. Ultimately, the consequences of this regulatory project extended far beyond this procedure. They strike at the structural foundations of constitutional liberty itself, and specifically freedom of religion. First, the selective bias is impossible to ignore. The proposals overwhelmingly targeted the Christian churches, while no equivalent regulatory architecture is even contemplated for any other religion. When the state isolates one faith community for special oversight, the language of this protection begins to resemble something far less neutral, because such regulation applied unevenly boils down to targeted religious discrimination against Christians that is merely dressed in bureaucratic vocabulary. Secondly, the whole justification for regulation exposes a far deeper paradox. The Commission frames its intervention as necessary to combat the abuses such as fraud and theft and exploitation of believers and misconduct within the religious institutions. But the fact of the matter is that all of these are already criminal offences under the existing criminal law. South Africa already possesses a full legislative framework to prosecute these acts across society. Why then create parallel layers of religious compliance mechanisms? The only logical explanation seems to be that there is an agenda aimed at ending the religious liberty of South Africa's Christians. The implications of such a parallel legislative framework are profound. A citizen committing fraud faces criminal procedures or criminal prosecutions. A religious leader committing the same offences would face criminal procedures or prosecutions and regulatory sanctions under religion-specific frameworks. This is not equality before the law. but differentiated punishment based on institutional identity. In effect, clergy risk becoming subjects to dual systems of enforcement, a secular criminal regime and an additional regulatory structure governing religious conduct. This is reminiscent of the gravest atrocities committed against Christians under all the communist regimes in the 20th century. Finally, the most consequential impact lies in the constitutional domain. Religious regulation, by its nature, inevitably intrudes into belief expression doctrine and speech. Freedom of religion then becomes conditioned upon compliance, and freedom of speech within religious contexts, like sermons or teachings or doctrinal positionings, then suddenly enters a gray zone where theological disagreement risks being condemned as regulatory violations. It's really time for Christians from all different ethnicities in this country to actively resist this diabolical tyranny of the state, which is ultimately aimed at eradicating true freedom of religion in South Africa. It is high time for churches to make their voices heard in this matter, or even to educate themselves on this matter in the first place. In a recent video, we highlighted several ways in which this process by the CRL constitutes an assault on Christianity in South Africa. We've been covering this topic for months now. Check out our first full report by clicking this link on your screen right now to understand more. And do support our work by joining the Willem Petzer Group as a paid member. Only with you investing in us are we able to make videos such as these every single day. Simply follow the easy steps on this banner. Goodbye and God bless.